Hello everyone, we're going to be continuing on with book number 1, aka Sipapu, Oddessy. And this is going to be, we're going to be starting with 2 here. It was natural that he began to reminisce about how he came to be in this place at this time. It all seemed to begin when Diana started to experience some rather strange phenomena. She began to have vivid psychic occurrences. Everyone chuckled about what she referred to as her angels and spirit friends. Although she told things with tongue-in-cheek style, it soon became obvious that no one should ever discount Diana's angels. They were wonderfully accurate. When the first big gasoline crunch occurred, Steve had begun to dream of ways in which he might contribute to making America energy independent. The idea became his obsession, and after several years of planning and research, he, Diana, and Bob formed a partnership and started a small alternative energy company called Energy Alternatives. The original business thrust was in the cogeneration market, but almost immediately the bottom fell out of the market because natural gas prices went up and the price paid for the electricity they produced was being reduced by purchasing utilities. Things continued to fall apart in the alternative energy business. Each project, as it reached final contracts, fell by the wayside for one reason or another. It always worked out that it was due to economic changes beyond their control, but results were the same: disaster. During this period of time, Diana had begun to develop what seemed to be far-out ideas. A couple of the children began to have unexplained experiences as well. In particular, their youngest son, Nick, became fanatical in his efforts to figure out how to reproduce some of the energy inventions of Nikola Tesla. He studied astrophysics in Colorado and became almost a recluse in his tormented mind because of his fear of nuclear destruction. He was obsessed with the destructive aspects of pollution and toxic waste. He was truly a man out of his time and could not promise his values to those of current society. Compromise his values. Diana, on the other hand, felt an intense need to be able to contact the sources within her own mind and took time away from daily life to become a hypnotherapist. She became very successful in learning to contact her inner self, and one day simply announced to the group that she had been told from higher sources that there was a great intended mission for the group and that the proper time the Tesla secrets would be given them. This would be in addition to many other instructions and information. Just prior to his 26th birthday, Nick killed himself. It was incredible how what appeared to be external influences seemed to ease the parents and family through the circumstances with almost studied stability. It was obvious, at least to the family members, that the boy had only ceased to exist in his tormented human state and moved into a more effective state, as what Diana referred to as a spirit teacher. Bob was in awe as he observed the happenings of the next couple of years unfold. Changes were dramatic in all members of the family. Friend groups changed and directions became firm. Bob, too, underwent major changes within his own belief systems. Through Steve and Diana, he met a Lakota Sioux medicine man who became a dear friend and teacher. He was at last sorting out his own roots and liked what he found. The death of Nick seemed to be a turning point of great magnitude. It was almost as if he had come to Earth for that purpose. Steve's response was profound, and he immersed himself in efforts to further his understanding, love, and peace. Bob had always discounted any reference to the possibility of reincarnation or pre-planned missions to Earth, but he was witnessing events that spoke otherwise. After setbacks in the cogeneration portion of the business, the company moved into the production of electricity via wind turbines. At that time, the wind farms were established as tax shelters, so the machinery was about as bad in most instances as laws permitted, and almost all of the wind turbines eventually failed. Energy alternatives also failed, along with many other companies in the energy industry during that period of time. Groundwork had been set in place, however, how far back Bob couldn't guess, for events that would take place following failure of the company. It seemed that through guidance, which appeared to have no source except from other dimensions, business plans came forth which seemed inspired toward success. Financial opportunities began to tumble in one upon another. Opportunities opened up in areas in which, at first observation, there seemed to be no talent or affinity for participation. It was simply assumed that those things were intended and every opportunity was accepted with grace and appreciation. Steve and Diana believed directions were being given to them to become anonymous in their activities. The company was dissolved and they underwent personal bankruptcy so as to completely disassociate themselves with their unsuccessful past. They laughed a lot and lovingly referred to their projects as God's work. They became very active in the movement toward enlightenment and help for humanity. Bob found it contagious, and before he realized it, he too was up to his neck in the same activities. He loved it. He loved the people he met, and was beginning to feel very productive along with gaining a much longed for inner peace. He often wondered what in the world people were thinking about when they cast stones towards those involved in trying to help their fellow humans in the wonderful earth upon which we all must live. After all, there can be no escape from the planet. If you go up, you have to come down. If you move outward, you have to come back. We are attached to Earth, and it becomes clear that we must learn to treat our existence here more respectfully. We must nurture our mother and stop our destructive games, or it is obvious we will all perish. One of the instructions Diana had received in the meditation was that a movie or series of movies should be made to alert the public to the terrible visceral damage being done to Mother Earth by the nuclear explosions, acid rain, toxic waste, and hydrocarbon pollution. Steve and Bob were directed by Diana to several books and writings, both ancient and modern, strongly suggesting that the Earth acted as a huge single electrical conductor. This hypothesis was completely in accord with the findings and research of Nikola Tesla. The paramount meaning of that information wasn't clear until Steve and Diana spent several hours with Sister Thedra after the second annual gathering of light at Mount Shasta. She showed them a recent drawing done through a scientific channel in Argentina, which clearly indicated that the Earth has accumulated enough negative energy to create a latent tilt of 13 degrees from its present axis. At the gathering, several of the channeled entities had made explicit references to the great concerns of the mighty council of the intergalactic fleet, that they might be unable to support the present axis long enough for humanity to reverse the negative energy flow that was creating the problem. They had made it abundantly clear that all of creation is made of energy, and that the negative thoughts of war, terrorism, hate, and general human unhappiness imputed a negative charge to Mother Earth, which must be offset by positive thoughts of love, happiness, and peace, to bring her into balance. Any nuclear explosion in space will result in the fleets removing their temporary balancing energy, which will allow the shift of axis to immediately occur. The tidal waves, volcanic eruptions, and earthquakes following such a shift would probably eliminate most life on the planet. Thus, it became clear, especially to Diana, why the movie was so extraordinarily important. Needless to say, the responsibility weighed heavily on both Diana and Steve, even though they received the love and support extended through Virginia Essene and Anne Valentine, who had published the two most valuable books available in those days, Secret Truths and New Teachings. The major pillar of strength was, of course, Carl Bryant, the peace pipe smoking Sioux from South Dakota. He had always had the right stuff at the right time for Diana, whether it was encouragement, laughter, or a swift kick. Bob roused himself briefly, and then again lapsed into the semi-conscious twilight to avoid the pain. His mind went back to his favorite memories of some 15 years ago. It had been all the same, all at the same time, the most difficult and yet wonderful time of his life. He had been sent to Argentina on a business trip and found himself with a couple of weeks of free time. He had always had a nagging wish to go to Peru and see the ancient ruins of Machu Picchu and the plains of Nazca. He had read of the giant engravings and phenomenon which was reported from that area, had read all the books about so-called space vehicles, and was aware that the Peruvians accepted without question the presence of spacecraft. At any rate, he had always wanted to investigate the area and took that opportunity to do so. Early in his visit, he met a delightful couple, Richard Peterson and his friend Athenia. Athenia's friend and Rangia appeared the following day, and Bob was totally captivated by her. They called her Rangia, and very soon the four were practically inseparable. Some of their stories seemed incredible to Bob, and he only half believed most of them. Richard had told him that he, too, had not believed the stories as they were told to him in the beginning. However, he changed his mind. Athenia and Rangia simply stated that they were here from another planet and proceeded to prove it. Richard had the opportunity of traveling in one of their shuttlecraft and had taken to visit on one of the large ships called a mothership. Bob had fallen hopelessly in love with Rangia, and although she continually explained that she was not of the planet Earth, he never really believed it. She told him that she was here on a mission and would find it necessary to be available to depart at any time for her orders were to do so. It came, however, with as much surprise as if he had never been told of such a thing, when suddenly one evening she and Athenia announced that they would be leaving first thing in the morning. They said there was a crisis regarding Earth which necessitated massing of the space fleets. She had started to go into great detail but stopped when she sensed the heartbreaking conflict going on inside him. Too late, he had accepted her honesty, and the following day she, Athenia, and their space brothers vanished. Bob was devastated, totally lost. He knew in his heart there would never be another love for him. He stayed around Lima for a few days with Richard, but knew he must return to Los Angeles and get on with his life. He had never stopped having her visit in his dreams. He was musing in the painful pleasure of those Peru memories when the pain of the human body roused his consciousness. As he squinted through blurred eyes, he saw the red tail sitting on a ledge above his head. It took flight, swooped low over him, and glided up the canyon. It appeared to Bob that the hawk simply dissolved into the painting on the cliff face. His consciousness dissolved also. As he roused again, he looked up the canyon where the hawk had gone. The last thing he remembered was the vision of an Indian maiden standing on a boulder beneath the area where he had seen the painting. He made a desperate effort to hold on to consciousness, but it slowly slipped away once again. The maiden motioned for someone further up the canyon, and 4 young Indian men moved quietly forward to join her. She ran over to Bob and began to evaluate his injuries. The men unrolled a travois and gently gathered Bob onto it, and And as his darkness folded about him, they were taking him gently up the canyon trail. All that remained were the drag trails in the sandy soil and the ever-watching hawk. And that'll be the end of this one.